Washington's streets feel unusually quiet for a weekday morning. The sound of traffic is lighter, the footpaths less crowded, and behind the marble facades of the Capitol's federal buildings, the silence speaks louder than any official statement. The United States has entered its 36th day of budget paralysis, the longest government shutdown in the nation's history, and the consequences are no longer abstract numbers in a spreadsheet. They are visible on faces, in shuttered doors, and in stories told across kitchen tables and park benches. The stalemate began on October 1, when partisan gridlock froze the flow of federal funds. Democrats and Republicans, locked in dispute over immigration policy, social spending and agency oversight, failed to approve a new budget. Since then, the machinery of government has slowed to a crawl. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees have either been furloughed or forced to work without pay. Public services are thinning, and entire institutions, from museums to national parks, are closed. What began as a political test of wills has morphed into an endurance contest that affects millions. In Washington, people have grown accustomed to the unusual sight of tourists taking selfies outside locked gates. The White House lawns are immaculate, but behind them, meetings drag on without resolution. The Capitol dome still gleams in the weak winter sun, yet the energy beneath it feels exhausted. For those who rely on the government's steady rhythm, contract workers, restaurant staff, tour guides, even small businesses that depend on daily federal traffic each passing day tightens the strain. Among them is Emily Karpowicz, a filmmaker and restaurant employee whose frustration captures the moral fatigue many feel. She says, "I don't want all my taxes to be used to fund ICE agents who do nothing but rip people from their homes and rip workers from my restaurant who are my friends. I don't want to pay them while our healthcare system is in danger and people I know and love in my family who depend on these resources are simply ignored." Her voice, steady but angry, carries beyond her personal story, a reflection of the growing disconnect between political decisions and the people who live with their consequences. Not far away, Guillermo, a local resident who chose not to give his last name, explains how daily life has subtly changed. He says, "I don't work here, but I have friends and colleagues who work in federal agencies. For me, it's really strange to live in a time when I can't even enjoy certain experiences of living in Washington, like going to museums or visiting certain places, because they depend on federal funding to operate, so I can't enjoy them." His words reveal a quieter, less visible loss, the erosion of civic life. Washington's museums, galleries, and public spaces have long stood as living classrooms of democracy. Now, with closed signs taped to their doors, the city's identity feels suspended. Inside the corridors of power, negotiators repeat familiar scripts. The president insists his proposal is a matter of national security. The opposition calls it reckless and divisive. Both claim to act in defense of the American people. But as paychecks vanish and bills mount, those citizens, the ones beyond the marble columns, are asking whether anyone in Washington still remembers what that defense looks like. Federal workers line up at food banks, their uniforms pressed, but their faces weary. Loan officers speak of clients missing payments for the first time in years. Small towns near military bases brace for sharp economic dips as civilian spending dries up. Across the country, nearly 800,000 families are touched in some way by the shutdown's reach. In the nation's capital, the mood oscillates between disbelief and anger. On social media, some joke that Washington is experiencing a proper and never accidental vacation. But for many, it's no laughing matter. Essential employees, from air traffic controllers to border officers, continue to report for duty without pay, a test of loyalty and patience that has few precedents in modern times. Analysts call it an invisible tax, the cost of political dysfunction measured in unpaid labor. Economists warn that the damage will not be easily reversed. The Congressional Budget Office estimates billions in lost productivity. Consumer confidence has dipped to its lowest level since the pandemic. Restaurants that depend on government staffers for lunch crowds are closing early, and tourism operators report cancellations from overseas visitors deterred by uncertainty. Washington, usually animated by politics, feels oddly hollow. The symbolism has not gone unnoticed abroad. Foreign media describe a superpower hamstrung by its own politics, a democracy struggling to keep its lights on. Allies privately question how the United States can advocate fiscal discipline or governance abroad when its own institutions remain paralyzed. Adversaries, meanwhile, seize the narrative as proof of American decline. Yet within the United States, the story is more complicated. It is not just about political rivalry, but about competing visions of what the country should fund, protect, and prioritize. Amid the ideological fog, individuals like Emily and Guillermo give the crisis a human face. Emily's restaurant sits a few blocks from federal offices, now darkened. The regular lunchtime crowd policy analysts, interns, security officers has vanished. She speaks about staff members forced to pick up side jobs or move in with relatives. It's like everyone's just waiting for something to start again, she says, but nobody knows when. Her sentiment echoes nationwide. In rural communities, farmers await subsidies trapped in bureaucratic limbo. In coastal states, environmental monitoring projects are on pause. Even Native American reservations, which depend on federal funding for education and healthcare, face critical shortages. The web of dependency on Washington's functioning is vast, and when it stops, so do lives. Every evening, television networks broadcast the same montage. The Capitol at dusk, the empty steps of the Lincoln Memorial, a child holding a sign that reads, "My mom works for you." Viewers have seen it before, but never for this long. Commentators warn of fatigue setting in, not just among workers, but among voters who see political theatre replacing governance. Inside Congress, there are whispers of short-term deals, extensions, or emergency measures, yet none address the deeper fractures, the mistrust that has hardened between the two parties. Some senators privately admit that compromise has become a political liability. Others fear backlash from their base if they appear too conciliatory. The shutdown, once a temporary bargaining chip, now feels like a symbol of permanent dysfunction. Meanwhile, on the streets of Washington, resilience takes quieter forms. Volunteers distribute meals to furloughed workers. Churches open donation drives. Local theatres offer free admission to government employees, hoping to provide small relief. The crisis has unexpectedly rekindled a sense of community neighbours helping one another where institutions have failed. In that solidarity lies a muted defiance. If politics can't move, people still can. At the national level, the president holds firm. In his speeches, he blames congressional obstruction. Opponents accuse him of hostage politics. Polls show the public divided, though more now blame the White House than Congress. Analysts describe a dangerous trend, the normalization of shutdowns as political tactics. Each one erodes trust, confidence, and stability a little more. Even the physical landscape of the Capitol bears the strain. The flag atop the White House flies at half-mast, honoring the late former Vice President Dick Cheney, a symbol, perhaps unintentionally, of national mourning beyond one man's death. Beneath it, the city's rhythm falters, its morale dimmed. Security fences glint under winter light, and in Lafayette Park, pigeons scatter around a handful of tourists who wander through, unsure whether they're witnessing history or just its pause. Reporters gather daily outside the Capitol, microphones in hand, waiting for any hint of progress. Each statement feels recycled. Talks are ongoing, constructive discussions, bridging differences, phrases that now ring hollow. What once sounded like diplomacy now resembles delay. For every day without resolution, the economic cost climbs and the political temperature rises. Back in the neighborhoods, the human cost grows quieter but deeper. Parents stretch paychecks that no longer come. Landlords issue warnings. Credit cards fill the gaps. Psychologists in Washington report spikes in anxiety and depression among furloughed workers. The emotional toll, they say, is as corrosive as the financial one. In homes across the Capitol, children ask why their parents can't go to work, and there are no simple answers. As the shutdown surpasses its fifth week, historians draw comparisons to previous crises. But this one, they note, feels different. Not only because of its length, but because of its symbolism, a shutdown in an era defined by speed. In a digital world where decisions and data move instantly, the idea of government simply stopping feels almost archaic. And yet, it is happening in the world's largest economy. Emily's story returns as a refrain. She continues to work part-time. Her film project stalled. Her frustration has turned into advocacy. She joins local marches demanding Congress reopen the government, carrying a placard that reads, "People before politics." For her, the shutdown has become proof that moral clarity is missing in Washington. We're all paying, she says, but no one's listening. Guillermo walks past the Smithsonian each morning on his way to a cafe job. The museum doors remain closed. The banners of exhibitions hang untouched, swaying slightly in the breeze, reminders of cultural life put on hold. When the government stops, he says softly, you realize how many parts of your life depend on it. By now, even seasoned analysts have run out of metaphors. Some call it a standoff, others a slow-motion collapse. What remains clear is that the cost of inaction has outgrown the original debate. Every passing day reshapes the public's perception of leadership and tests the resilience of a system designed to endure disagreement, but not paralysis. In Washington, the monuments still stand. The marble still gleams, but beneath the grandeur, the city feels suspended, caught between history and uncertainty. The world watches, waiting for a signal that the machinery of American governance can still turn. And for millions of Americans, from Emily and Guillermo to the unseen workers keeping essential services alive, the hope is simple, that the lights of their democracy will soon shine again.